Lowcountry saw several inches of sleet and snow Tuesday night into Wednesday morning. Today, I talk one-on-one with Charleston weather's Jared Smith for a recap of this recent event for this edition of Quintin's Close-Ups. And if you haven't already, subscribe to my YouTube channel and like Quintin's Close-Ups on Facebook. Jared Smith with Charleston Weather. Welcome back to Quintin's Close-Ups.
Hey, Quintin, good to talk to you again.
Yes, sir. We agreed to come back on and do a follow-up interview, obviously because of what transpired over the past 2 days. And as you know, the wintry precipitation began Tuesday evening around 7 o'clock, falling first the snow mixed in with sleet along the coast. And of course, the inland regions like Berkeley and Dorchester counties actually saw thick snowfall. So let me ask you this, Jared. How did we get from Tuesday to right now?
Well, I think let's go back and talk about what transpired on Tuesday because I think there's a lot of interesting things there. Early Tuesday, I think we even back up a little bit and say, the models give us a good idea as to the fact that something is going to happen and potentially to what degree something is going to happen. But the proof is in the observations. And what we saw in New Orleans, where there are some spots getting nearly a foot of snow, people playing ice hockey in the French Quarter of New Orleans on the streets. It's like, okay, maybe we've got something here. There might be this might be doing a little bit more than we first thought. There was always some question of whether there was going to be some sort of banding that was going to set up, and that was one that we were going to have to monitor closely, and that did end up materializing. Did materialize over the Tri-County. What was less clear was how much of that was going to be sleet, how much of that was going to be mixing, how much of that was going to be, pure snow. As you mentioned, inland locations got a little bit more in the way of pure snow. They didn't have that, sleet incursion. Really, if you drew 17A, that was actually a pretty good dividing line between where it was mostly snow and where the sleet fell. Now, my part of West Ashley over here, I was in the sleet for a good while. It changed over to snow about 10 11 o'clock, something like that, but it was always mixing in. I could hear the pellets going for a time. I could hear it, then it calmed down. Some folks on Johns Island didn't get anything but sleet. They had like an inch of sleet accumulation, which is far less fun. And then of course, folks inland, they're like, okay, this is impressive. The big winner was an observation in Cross of 6 inches of snow. But most spots got, roughly, 2 to 4 inches, which is a little bit above it where we thought, when we talked, that's a little bit more than what we thought that was going to be on the higher end. And as it turned out, the moisture was a little bit better. Cold air was a little bit better. Of course, the warm nose hung on, at the coast there, but those are the small things that can have a huge difference on a winter forecast here in the South. But overall, the corridor, the higher resolution models did a pretty decent job getting the corridor of best snow, which was a treat for a lot of people.
Yes. Yes, indeed. You talked obviously about the sleet and how much they got over on Johns Island versus others. I know that obviously that sleet created from the freezing rain was falling just off the coast, if I'm not mistaken. So how much did that actually cut down on snowfall totals for places just like Johns Island?
Yeah, it was interesting. There was a little bit of freezing drizzle to start. I did have some ice buildup before, and there were some spots, as you mentioned, closer to the islands that were actually seeing some pretty significant ice buildup at times. I don't think we have any solid reports from there because a lot of it, then everything changed over.
Yes.
But what is based on the liquid equivalent that fell, and based on some of the calculations that had been done around how much snow was supposed to fall and things like that, if it had been pure snow, I mean, we probably may have cut it down by 2/3 in some spots as far as like what they got in ice and sleet versus what they could have gotten in snow. Now the snowflakes that I saw they were very icy. They were very like they weren't pretty. They weren't the pretty type of snowflakes. Yeah, exactly. That stuff is compacted and all that. But I woke up, 7 a.m. Took a look
Yes.
outside, got a measurement.
Right.
I had a 2.7 at my house after taking a few samples and averaging those together. So it was a pretty solid snowfall.
Yes.
Um, and yeah, it looked great. It looked great. And I have promptly spent the last 3 days inside, except I left
Yeah.
the house briefly today for a little bit, finally.
Right.
Once the
Yeah.
sun came out, started melting some stuff away.
Yes. And now it's back to cloudy again, unfortunately. So
Yeah.
all of this stuff here is going to probably stick overnight.
Yeah, that's to be expected. I think we're going to be dealing with black ice here for the next couple nights. The snowpack is, certainly had a dent taken out of it today. It's going to have another dent taken out of it on Saturday. We'll get the sun back out on Saturday, and that should be out for a pretty good amount of the day. And
Yes.
today got into the mid 40s. We should get into
Yes.
the upper 40s on Saturday. That should help a lot. I noticed a distinct difference in my road, just the street
Oh,
outside of my
yes.
house, between this morning and this evening. So that so we're getting there.
Yes.
But that being said, we're going to get back into the 20s tonight, and we're going to be in the 20s on Saturday night too. And so whatever is remaining, whatever is there, could yet refreeze back into black ice. So need folks to be paying attention to that. If you're going to be out, after dark, take it really slow. But it's not the kind of time to be, to see how fast you can go in 526, for example. Um, this isn't the time for that.
Right.
Well, it really is never the time for that, but this
Right.
especially is not the time for that. We just need folks to be careful. I think is
Yes.
the most important thing that we can ask. And then by Sunday, I think we're going to be in good shape. Sunday morning, maybe one last round of some refreezing and melting that happens, but we're going to stay above freezing starting Sunday night, and that will continue well into next week. In fact, we're getting into the 60s next week. It looks
Yeah.
like.
Praise God.
Oh yeah,
Yes.
no doubt.
Thank you, Jesus. And
Yeah.
I saw a couple of people speeding behind me on my bicycle, and I'm trying to deliver food with care to the
Hmm.
people, and they're just
Hmm.
speeding, and no
Oh
one's
yeah.
slowing down.
Yeah. That's how
Uh,
it goes.
yeah, unfortunately. But you talked obviously about the places where they should have gotten the certain amount of snow turtles. What were those snow turtles? Well, expected snow turtles totals in those areas.
Yeah. So again, I would feel like that in some of those spots, you look at some of the reports around the coast. It was about 1 to 2 inches of snow and sleet accumulation. Snow and sleet are measured together, by the way. It's
Mm,
and it goes into the record books that way. It doesn't necessarily discriminate in the record books. So
yeah.
that's all measured together.
Mm,
But I mean, the moisture was certainly there, and had the warm nose not been there, I mean, it's very possible we could have seen a more widespread 3, 4, maybe 5 inches in some spots. Kind of closer to that 2018 event.
right.
As it is, I mean, this what we got was closer than to 2018 than a lot of us thought. A lot of us had been thinking for days. Again, we talked last time about high pressure,
Yes.
possibly pushing the storm track south and
Mm,
having a suppressing impact. But a northerly and northwest trend started emerging on the models a little bit. Started the moisture content was pretty solid. Um, and it was looking like, and the one key thing is that it was looking like that the colder air was going to win the tug of war. It did in some spots, it didn't in every spot, but overall, fact that we were able to see a week out in advance is like, hey, we might have some winter issues, uh, on these days, and we certainly did. And they may have persisted a little bit longer. If we had had just 1 to 2 inches of snow or ice, chances are good most spots, would be fine by now. We wouldn't be even having this conversation. But um, but the fact that we had more in the area of 2 to 3 to 4 in some spots, um, that's what's prolonging our recovery here a little bit. So we're getting there, but we're getting there.
Getting there. Oh man. And when you talk about obviously refreezing and black ice issues, what else are we should people be watching out for on those roads?
Those are the main things. I mean, again, like slush, black ice.
Oh yes.
Also, something that I saw today that I want to make sure folks are doing is that you need to clean the snow off of the top of your car.
Yes.
Please do that. There's a lot of people who didn't do that, and they
Right.
should be doing that. I see
Right.
people driving around with chunks of snow all over their
Oh
car, and it's like,
yes.
well, that's going to hit somebody.
Yeah.
And that is probably packed snow that is actually more like blocks of ice.
Yes.
So we need folks to be, taking care of the cars a little bit on this, and after the event, you're going to want to get a car wash because they've been salting the roads. They've
Yes.
been doing, and that's not something that we deal with a lot here.
Right.
Um, you definitely want to get your car washed because that can have a corrosive effect over time on an undercarriage and things like that. So got to be careful of that. Um, but I think as again as we get into the next couple nights, it's going to gradually get a little bit better, a little bit better. I think the main roads are probably in pretty good shape at this point. I was looking at some webcams today, and it certainly seemed like that they got most of that stuff dried out. We don't have any additional precipitation coming, so that's not going to be an issue. We're going to have some rain on Monday, but by then we'll be well above freezing, and we're going to be staying above freezing for several days. So again, not concerned there. Um, you know, just there's going to be patches, especially normally shaded areas, that are going to take longer to melt. I mean, I still have on the area in front of my house, for example, is pretty. There's a good bit of sunshine that gets onto it. It's pretty much clear at this point. But when I go around the corner
Yes.
and I go to the front of the neighborhood, there's still 1 to 2 inches of compacted snow and ice on the ground because the sun can't get there. So that's going to be something that we're going to have to keep an eye on over the next couple of days. But all in all, we're on the upswing. Um, there's still some pretty solid snowmen that I have seen uh, that are going to hang around maybe for one more day before eventually the 50s, and then the 60s next week will definitely be the end of it.
And will the rain help get most of that snow out on Monday?
Yeah, if there's any rain that falls at that point, Sunday, and again we'll see, we'll see what happens with the rain on Monday. That's not necessarily a slam dunk, but anything that falls on top of that snow is going to just help the rest of it out of here. Again, we'll be getting into the 50s on Sunday. We're going to be getting into the upper 50s on Monday, probably into the 60s Tuesday, Wednesday, and another chance of rain after that. The snow should be long gone by then, but still not bad when you can get through several days in Charleston with real snowpack.
That's right. That's right. And you talked earlier about maybe some winter issues that we had prior to this. Do you foresee any winter issues coming up for us next?
So in the forecastable future, no, we have a little bit of a break coming as far as we're gonna start to maybe warm up a little bit as we start getting into February. Can't rule it out. Pattern is still interesting, but there's going to be some changes to that pattern too. We're going to start to see a little bit more troughiness in the west, which is good because they need the rain out there. I've seen looks like that parts of California are going to get some much needed rain and snow um, starting next week, which is really good news. We'll hope that holds. Very hard to break a drought, and we just have to hope that that holds up because fires are still a major problem out there, and that directly connects to some of the the pattern issues that we're having right now. A lot of high pressure in the west, low pressure in the east, is that general thing, and that will and so that has made that very difficult firefighting wise to get some Mother Nature help there. So, feeling good about it. I think we'll warm up a little bit. There's been some model stuff in the far range trying to spin up some mischief, but it's really far out and there's no agreement. We'll keep an eye on it, see if it's a signal or if it's just noise. Um, there's always some phantom snowstorms on the models this time of year. It's the way it always works. Snow or ice
Yeah.
storms that show up on the models. Somebody gets excited, puts it to social media,
Oh yeah.
and then the actual time comes around and it's sunny and 60 degrees. So,
Mm,
we have to be discerning about
yes.
what's the signal, what's the noise. We'll keep an eye on it. But right now, this we should be in pretty good shape for at least the next week.
Oh, great. Thank God for that as well. You talked earlier about the high pressure and the low pressure, particularly on the um, on the West Coast versus now. Uh, have we seen something like this before in the past?
It's interesting. This is typically how it ends up working out. Um, typically when we have major cold snaps, it's usually really warm and dry in the west. In fact, we've been colder than Anchorage at times, which is hard to believe in winter, but
Yes.
that happens. That's like, oh my gosh, it's colder here than it is in Alaska, and it's like, well, that's the configuration of the atmosphere. All of
Right.
the really cold air is spilling down,
Mm.
into the eastern half of the continental U.S. So,
Right.
um, so that's the thing,
Mm.
and so it's not unheard of. What is a little different, what is a little bit more extreme is maybe it's pretty amplified, right? I mean, this is a pretty solid Arctic air mass that spilled in. Although again, not nearly like what we saw in 2018 when we didn't get above freezing for what 72 hours. We had more snowpack and it took a lot longer. So we've at least gotten above freezing every day since the event. Granted, barely above freezing, but we've
Yeah.
gotten there.
Yeah.
So and again, it's very strange to have a storm track that produces snow all the way down into New Orleans, and not
Right.
just snow like snow like
Right.
really not many mixing problems. I mean, when you have the National Weather Service office in Lake Charles, Louisiana, issuing a blizzard warning, the furthest south blizzard warning ever issued by the National Weather Service, um, and a more recent blizzard warning than a lot of the northern offices,
Right.
which is just that's just weird. That's a
Yeah.
little different.
Yeah.
The degree to which that we're seeing fire activity in the west, the strength of the Santa Ana winds, the fact that they've gotten no rain and everything like that, that's a little different. So again, there are some abnormalities here. The overall pattern it makes sense for what we were doing, but there are some abnormalities there that we have to take into consideration as well.
Wow. Yeah. You have done a tremendous job with this, forecasting it from beginning to end. So we thank you so much for this.
Mhm.
And I thank you for your time here on Quintin's Close Ups again, Jared Smith.
Thank you so much, Quentin. Always a pleasure.
Likewise.